Namaste and good afternoon, everyone. I am Ritika Gupta, Assistant Director at INFRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabha Evam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan. Extend my heartiest welcome to you all to INFRI #Web Policy Talk. Today, we are here for a panel discussion on rural realities in the Union Territory of Jammu, Kashmir, and Ladakh, practitioners' experiences in tackling the second wave in Indian villages. This discussion is being organized by Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies at INFRI. I would now like to request Dr. Simi Mehta, who is CEO and Editorial Director at INFRI, to introduce our eminent speakers further. Ma'am, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritika, and a very good afternoon to everyone. I hope you, your loved ones, and everyone around you are keeping safe and you are healthy. So, as the second wave of COVID-19 raged across the country since mid-April to even at present, and engulfs the rural spaces this time as compared to the to the first wave, since the start of the month of May, IMPRI has been organizing state-wise discussions to understand the practitioners' perspectives on the rural realities. And so far, we have held discussions for all the states of the country, including Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Haryana, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Manipur, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, Sikkim, Odisha, and Goa. And we have also covered the rural realities for the Union Territory of Puducherry. And today we have gathered to discuss the rural realities with the practitioners of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. And we are very fortunate that we have eminent practitioners who will be talking about their experiences in tackling the second wave. And I am so fortunate to be introducing our eminent panelists for the day. We have with us our moderator for the session would be Mr. Tikender Singh Pawar. He is the former deputy mayor of Shimla and visiting senior fellow at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute. As panelists, we have Mr. Sajjad Kargili. He is activist and political analyst of Ladakh. We have with us Mr. Tunduk Nurbu. He is the counselor of the 6th Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council, Leh. We have with us Dr. Pavitra Kumar Jaina. He is assistant professor in the School of Economics at Shri Mata Vaishno Devi University, Katra. We have with us Mr. Bashir Nadwi. He is teacher at Atraut. We have with us Professor Noor Ahmed Baba. He is professor in the Department of Politics and Governance from Central University of Kashmir, Naugam, Srinagar. We have with us Dr. Sajjad Pader. He is assistant professor at the Government Degree College at Khan Sahib, Budgam. And we have with us Dr. Seher Iqbal. She is development expert, fellow at Lady Margaret Hall. And finally, we have with us Dr. Bhatt Iqbal Majid sir. He is assistant professor of sociology and social work at the Central University of Jammu. And we have with us our presentation team who would be taking us through the numbers and a brief presentation. And we have Ms. Sakshi and Ms. Swati doing the presentation. So I would now invite Mr. Tikender Singh Pawar to take the session and proceedings forward. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Simi. And it's really my privilege, and I feel really very proud to moderate this session. This session that pertains to practitioners, especially in Jammu and Kashmir.
Can you hear us, Tikender sir? Yes, sir. Now we can hear you. but it's not audible. Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yes, audible now, sir. Yes.
Okay, great. So I was mentioning that I won't go into the statistics. Actually, we have all seen the uh, how this pandemic unfolded, and actually how our governments actually lived. And we have also seen how this pandemic has brought in new challenges as far as public health is concerned. And we have lost many of our, not a single family who has not been affected, in the sense that either we have lost our friends, our relatives, or we have seen how this pandemic has actually struck and bringing in many dimensions of this pandemic. So, and not a single state, by the way, in the country, except a few that were able to actually mitigate this crisis. So yeah, so when we say that it's the practitioner's experience, generally it comes to our mind that the practitioners are only from the medical fraternity, though we have a few who have actually devoted their complete almost 1.5 years complete without taking any leave to this work, and not single. And we can really understand the kind of trauma that has actually affected them, because they go back to their homes, isolate themselves. At times they get affected, and we have also lost a good number of our frontline workers. Actually, it's a serious challenge. I mean, no state has been left behind. That's one part. The second part is actually what has been the role of the government. I think that is also something that we need to critically review. The kind of structures that we have built in meeting our public health challenges, are they sufficient, or we have to go a little deeper into discussing those structures? Then we have also seen, though I mean this is something that we did not witness in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, where people died in front of the hospitals, and those ghastly scenes where they were not allowed admission in the hospitals, and for want of oxygen, for want of drugs, for want of beds, and thousands died. But yeah, I think we need to hear those stories from J&K and Ladakh, how they were able to meet this challenge. I think at the same time, there's something important that I need to mention. That is the state that I come from, that's Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir. We inherit some of our similar uh, development strategies and development trajectories as far as post-independence is concerned. Actually, it's very rarely known, and probably Jan Ries was one of those foremost economists who pointed out that look, J&K has a high development index, and the reason pertains to widespread land reforms that were brought in, and in Jammu and Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh. Normally, we talk about land reforms in Kerala, in West Bengal, Tripura, and some of the other states, Tamil Nadu, but hardly we speak about those land reforms. So, how are land reforms connected to this high development index, or can I just go ahead and say that also into some public policy paradigm, or a kind of different public hygiene, what we have witnessed in Jammu and Kashmir and what we have seen in Uttar Pradesh and in some of our Hindi heartland states. So I think that is also one of the areas that we need to discuss about, and we need to really uh, understand how has that was one of the concerns laid by many of our central leaders, that that's a serious challenge. But I think that's one of the great advantages that we find in J&K. And so of course, I'm sure, because we have wonderful panelists. We have people from public policy. We have practitioners, doctors. Then we also have political representatives. I think they're very important. Really thankful for them joining here from Kargil, from Leh. We wanted to have somebody from the bureaucracy also, but you know how these days to get people from the bureaucracy is like a really difficult task. Nevertheless, I think it's a very good panel. So I think one caution that I want to make, because we have more than 8 people who will be speaking and going by our time limit, I would suggest we should not extend more than 7 to 8 minutes so that we have some Q&As later, because I'm sure many of our friends and others are watching us on Facebook Live and also on this platform. So they will be very keenly actually watching and they would be very keen to ask questions actually, about once our presentation is done. And the last caveat that I want to make, that is actually we tried our level best, but we wanted to make it a gender balanced panel. So that's a caveat here. I mean, unfortunately, we couldn't do that. We only have one panelist, and of course, we have a good team here from Simi, Swati, Sakshi. But yeah, I think that's a caveat, and probably we'll try to improve it in the future, because I think that's a reality that I must admit right at the beginning. So over to you, Swati. I think we can go ahead with the statistics. And then Arjun, I mean, who should be the first speaker? Just let me know.
Yes, we will. So our team has prepared a short presentation. Sakshi, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Swati, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Swati, your Zoom is also working. Try Zoom.
That is actually misfunctioning.
No problem. Okay, go on. Yes. Be loud.
Namaskar. Namaskar, Vanit, Jule. I am Swati Solanki, researcher at INFRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evamniti Anusandhan Sansthan, New Delhi. I am currently pursuing my graduation in economics from Sri Ram College of Commerce. So today, we all have gathered here for a panel discussion on rural realities, practitioners' experiences in tackling the second wave in Indian villages for the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Jammu and Kashmir is located on the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent, centered on the plains around Jammu to the south and Dale of Kashmir to the north. The Union Territory is part of the larger region of Kashmir, which has been the subject of dispute between India, Pakistan, and China since the partition. Legislation passed in August 2019 set the stage for changing status of Jammu and Kashmir from statehood to Union Territory and splitting off a part of it known as the Ladakh region into a separate Union Territory. The change went into effect on October 31st, 2019. Jammu and Kashmir, formerly one of the largest princely states of India, is bounded to the east by Indian Union Territory of Ladakh, to the south by Indian states of Himachal Pradesh and Punjab, to the southwest by Pakistan, and to the northwest by the Pakistani-administered portion of Kashmir. The administrative capitals are Srinagar in summer and Jammu in winter. The area of the Union Territory is 101,000 square kilometers with a population of about 12 lakh according to 2011 census. Jammu and Kashmir has 20 districts, namely Anantnag, Bandipur, Baramulla, Budgam, Doda, Ganderbal, Jammu, Kathua, Kishtwar, Kulgam, Kupwara, Poonch, Pulwama, Rajouri, Ramban, Reti, Samba, Shopian, Srinagar, and Udhampur. The cultural, ethnic, and linguistic composition of Jammu and Kashmir varies across the region. About 2/3 of the population adheres to Islam. Hindus constitute most of the remaining third. There also are small minorities of Sikhs and Buddhists. The Union Territory's official languages are Urdu, English, Kashmiri, Dogri, and Hindi. Large orchards in the Vale of Kashmir produce apples, pears, walnuts, almonds, and cherries, which are among the Union Territory's major exports. In addition, the Vale is the sole producer of saffron in the Indian subcontinent. Many industries have developed from rural crafts, including handloom weaving of Luka silk, cotton, and wool. In addition to historical and religious sites, visitor destinations include the Snow Sports Center at Gulmarg and many lakes and rivers. Ladakh is administratively divided between Pakistan as part of Gilgit-Baltistan in the northwest and India in the southeast. In addition, China administers a portion of northeast Ladakh. The Ladakh consists of Kargil and Leh, 2 districts. It covers about 117,000 square kilometers and contains the Ladakh Range Ladakh is one of the highest regions of the world. Its natural features consist mainly of high plains and deep valleys. The high plain predominates in the east, diminishing gradually towards the west. Shepherds tend flock in the upland valleys that are too high for cultivation. Leh, the most accessible town of Ladakh, is an important trade center located 260 kilometers east of Srinagar. The climate of Ladakh is cold and dry. Vegetation is confined to valleys and sheltered spots. The principal products are wheat, barley, millet, and others. Woolen clothes and other textiles are the primary manufacturers. Coming to the socio-economic indicators, about 73% of the total population resides in rural areas. The sex ratio for the Union Territory is 883, and the literacy rate is 67. The progress made in terms of sustainable development goals, the Union Territory is ranked 19 and 26 in terms of per capita income. The first and the second wave of the COVID-19 has hit India very badly, and the Union Territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh has been no exception. As of April 2020, during the first wave, Jammu and Kashmir saw a fatality rate of about 1.23%. In terms of the district-wide distribution of the total cases as of July 2020, districts like Srinagar, Baramulla, Kulgam added to the. According to officials, Jammu and Kashmir has witnessed an increase in coronavirus positive cases at a pace of more than 8.12% this year. The situation is challenging if we compare it with last year's April figures. Seeing the rising number of cases, various states and union territories have imposed lockdowns in phased manners and then the unlock phases. In terms of the total tally of cases in Ladakh, Ladakh is among the top 15 states and union territories with cases per million higher than the national average. In terms of the second wave of COVID-19, as of 31st May 2021, Jammu and Kashmir confirmed about 2.9 lakh total COVID cases with total deaths of about 3,900. And for the Union Territory of Ladakh, total cases confirmed stand at 18,000 and total deaths at about 188. Several states and union territories have extended lockdowns to reduce the spread of COVID amid a deadly second wave. Some announced a few relaxations. Jammu and Kashmir has exempted business establishments with certain restrictions, and the lockdown in Ladakh, Union Territory, has been extended till June 7. In terms of vaccination drive, about 1.8 lakh people have been administered both the doses in Jammu and Kashmir, and for Ladakh, about 1.5 lakh people have been given the vaccine. In terms of vaccine wastage, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh both have high rates. There has also been emerging issues in terms of health infrastructure and vaccination. For the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, DRDO has established COVID beds in hospitals and has also ramped up the oxygen supply. The state has inoculated more than 57% of its 45+ population, which is far more than the national average of about 44%. However, a high 10% vaccination rate has also been reported for the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. For the Ladakh Union Territory, there is also a shortage of pediatricians and anesthetists. The Union Territory has fully vaccinated highest proportion of 11% of its population and 25% have received their first dose. However, poor internet connectivity is hampering the COVID-19 vaccination drive. Now, on this note, we now look forward to our panelists in hearing their views and experiences in tackling the COVID-19 wave, moving towards a healthy and prosperous Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Thank you.
Yes, so Tikender sir, over to you. Please unmute. Yeah. Tikender sir, please unmute.
Arjun.
Yes.
So who do you want me to ask? Who should be the first speaker?
I think Dr. Seher Iqbal ma'am's connection is really good. We should start with her.
Who?
Dr. Seher Iqbal.
Okay, Dr. Seher Iqbal.
Yes. Ma'am is joining us from Srinagar. Ma'am, can you hear us?
Wait. Yeah. So
we cannot hear her.
And
ma'am, can you speak something?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
yes, just hold on.
Yes.
Will Simi introduce Dr. Seher?
Yes. Simi has already done at the start. Simi, would you like to do? Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
wait,
Dr. Seher
wait,
Iqbal is a development expert.
wait, Simi, wait. Yeah. So we've seen the statistics, and before I asked Simi to introduce Dr. Seher to call as the first speaker, I think there's one more important dimension to this pandemic that we are actually witnessing in J&K and Ladakh. And that is that, the Disaster Management Act flows from the PM to the CM and to the DM. There is no CM actually in J&K. And of course, in Ladakh, we have the council. I mean, we've seen, but, and since I've several times interacted with the Ladakhis, and of course, we have a council in Kargil, but how disempowered that council is. I mean, so I think all that also needs to be kept in mind. It's been a long period since we have the elected governance in J&K. So, how are we actually viewing it? I mean, is it compounding? Is it helping? Whatever. I think all that also needs to be kept in mind. So, Simi, over to you. I think it's good that if you could invite Dr. Singh.
Just to interrupt here, I think what Mr. Tikender said. I would really like Dr. Sajjad Padar to come into the political dispensation and how that is affecting relief measures, because he's the expert on that. So if he can go first, I can go after that.
Not to worry. I think, Simi, if Dr. Padar is there, then we can go ahead.
Yes. Okay, so
Great.
Dr. Sajjad
Thanks, Dr.
Padar. He is assistant professor at the Government Degree College at Khan Sahib Badgaon. Sajjad, over to you. Welcome.
Okay, am I audible to all people?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm actually living in Anantnag. I live in a village, but my posting is in another district, that's Badgaon, but that too in a rural area, Khan Sahib Badgaon. So if we look into J&K Union Territory, more than 70% population live in rural area or rural areas. When we witnessed the first wave of COVID, coronavirus pandemic, so I think rural area was not majorly affected in Kashmir. I remember in my own village, we just had 2 cases in the first wave. But the second wave is significantly impacting the rural population in terms of the number of cases and in terms of there is some noise from other.
No problem. Please go ahead, Doctor.
Okay. I'm thinking that the second wave has affected rural Kashmir in a major way, both in terms of number of cases and in terms of other aspects of life. In my own village, as I told you that in the first wave, there were only 2 reported cases, but in the present case, second wave, more than 100 cases have been reported and the number continues. So if we look into present scenario in J&K, there were some 3 lakh people who got affected, some 4,000 people who died due to this virus, and there's still around 35,000 people who are recovering either at home or from different hospitals in the Union Territory. So coming to the state of affairs and the government response, the reason Seher Madam said that I should come first. So naturally, it is very desirable that you have a democratic setup in place, because those people, the politicians, I personally believe are more close to the people, and they have a broad network of people who are connected with them. So naturally, it would have made a difference. But I don't think that the present government or bureaucratic setup has not failed. That I must confess. So if we apply scale, I mean, what was the government response? If we say very good, average or poor, my personal opinion is that the response from the government is good. This is my personal opinion. Now, how do I kind of infer this? The response is good from the government. There are some indicators for that. Number one is testing in rural areas. Even in my own village, testing facilities are available. People are being encouraged to go for tests, and if they test positive, then a team of health experts visits the home. They kind of give proper guidance to people how they should maintain self quarantine. Uh, Both rapid antigen tests and RT-PCR are available in our village, and I know from neighboring villages as well. So now, if we come to the vaccination process, we had a ASHA worker in our village. So when the vaccination process started a month back for 45 plus age group, so the ASHA worker kind of she went home to home, pleading people, please come for vaccination, please come for vaccination. And there was still a lot of hesitancy from people that whether we should go for vaccination. But the point is that vaccines were available, and uh, why people are reluctant. The people in rural areas are reluctant both for tests and for vaccination. Reason is that where rural population is susceptible to rumors, and there are so many conspiracy theories making rounds about tests and vaccines. So unfortunately, the rural population has fallen prey to those rumors. And the ASHA worker, as I told, she went home to home, requesting people, please go for vaccines. And we know from other states, people are asking for vaccines, but in J&K, vaccines have been made free of cost, available to the people, but still there is some hesitancy. Now, the bigger challenge for the government is how to confront these kind of rumors, conspiracy theories. And for that, I think government alone cannot do enough unless people of some influence, like clergymen, like civil society, like NGOs, as Sahar Madam is also working in the NGO sector, they have a major role to play, both in terms of socializing people about the virus and in other aspects as well. The moderator in the very beginning said that not only health experts, I mean, the people from the health department, of course, they are the frontline staff who are dealing with this. But everyone is contributing in one way or the other. For example, in my college, I'm NSS officer. So we have some 1,000 NSS volunteers who are connected with NSS officer of Kashmir University. And the NSS officer in turn is connected with Ministry of Youth Affairs. So there is a network of NSS volunteers, means students from colleges all across the country. So they are also playing their part in terms of making people aware about the pandemic, in terms of confronting the rumors. I have many of my students who even announce in the mosques and urge people to go for vaccination testing. So they are also playing their role in whatever way possible. Now, if we come to the impact on economic life of rural Kashmir, I think as the moderator said in the beginning that Kashmir's rural population is somewhat different. I mean, we are more or less an egalitarian society, largely because of the land reforms that were implemented in early 1950s. So there is no major crisis about food, etc. And food is available also in the stores as well. I went to the store previous day, so I saw there that food is available there. But there is a minor impact in terms of in terms of migrant workforce who used to come from Bihar mostly to Kashmir, and they used to help us in the agricultural activities. But right now, there is hardly any presence of migrant workers visible. So that in way might minorly affect the agricultural activities. So apart from that, I don't. I think one important factor is that there is 10% vaccine wastage. That should not happen. And the second factor, as I told you, that we have to confront these conspiracy theory. And thirdly, I would end up with this factor that in spite of the fact that we have a bureaucratic setup and government, but if this government also makes efforts to reach out to the politicians, and politicians have a huge cadre base at their disposal, so that can help in a big way in kind of effectively dealing with the pandemic. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Sajjad. I think that was a very interesting presentation. And I don't want to repeat some of the important points, but I think this whole notion of conspiracy theory will just go into later detail. But maybe I'll just park this question for you later, Dr. Sajjad, because we have been hearing news, at least 2 years of pandemic, and even before that, because when the abrogation of 370 took place, we are a witness to massive kind of loss to the Apple economy. I mean, you know, your Apple economy is far larger than ours. I'm from Himachal. Himachal is, I think, 5,000 CR. I don't know how much is Kashmir. So I'm told, you know, those were the issues. I mean, so maybe later I just park it to you. I mean, how do you think that is? Okay. I think then from here we go to our next speaker, and I would like to jump to Leh straight away. Sundar Saab, are you there? Murguji, who is the elected councillor? And Simi, would you like to introduce Tulip Saab, or
yes,
should I just ask him to speak straight away?
Yeah, I can invite Mr. Tulip. He is the councillor. He's the councillor of the 6th Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council. He is joining us from Leh. Sir, over to you.
Hello everyone, this is Tundu Murgu, and first of all, thank you very much for including me in this panel discussion. I was not able to go through all the meetings just because of some network problem. I was disconnected for a while. Hello? Hello?
So please continue.
Am I audible
Yes,
to everyone?
Yes, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Hello. Oh, जी. So sir, जब 2020 में जब पेंडेमिक आया था तो ले एरिया में ज्यादातर अर्बन एरिया में ये अफेक्टेड हुआ था. So at that time I was having a solo trip from Bhutan and West Bengal and all of other states of the country. So जब मैं ले आया था तो यहाँ का कोविड सिचुएशन सिनेरियो जो है काफी डिफरेंट था बाकी और स्टेट से, क्योंकि यहाँ पे प्रॉपर अवेयरनेस नहीं था, इंफॉर्मेशन नहीं था. सो एवरीथिंग वाज एक्सैजरेटेड. सो लोग ओवर रिएक्ट कर रहे थे. तो पहला प्रॉब्लम यहाँ पे कोविड नहीं था सर, पहला प्रॉब्लम था सेंस ऑफ. अगर आपको कोविड हो जाए तो सोसाइटी आपको ताना मारेगा, तो वो एक बड़ा प्रॉब्लम था और वो आज भी है. सो रूरल एरियाज जो ले में है, यहाँ इंफॉर्मेशन है कोविड रिलेटेड, लेकिन अवेयरनेस, प्रॉपर अवेयरनेस नहीं है. मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन बहुत है. जैसे कि लोग डर रहे हैं कि टेस्ट, अगर हम टेस्ट के लिए चले जाए तो 100% पॉजिटिव निकल जाएगा. पॉजिटिव निकल जाएगा तो लोग क्या कहेंगे. अगर कोई सिम्टम्स है तो लोग बता नहीं रहे, गर्म पानी पी लो ठीक हो जाएगा. And all those like misinformation they have. So there is lack of trust on government from the public side, sir. क्योंकि हाल ही में जब अभी यहाँ वैक्सीनेशन हो रहे हैं तो डेथ भी काफी सारे हुए थे पिछले इसी 10-15 दिन में. शायद हाईएस्ट डेथ रेट जो है हमने विटनेस किया था. तो इनमें से कुछ लोग ऐसे भी थे जिन्होंने वैक्सीन का दोनों डोज उन्हें मिल चुका था सर. तो अब लोगों में ये बड़ा छोटा सा कम्युनिटी है, तो एकदम से जो भी यहाँ पे न्यूज़ हो वो स्प्रेड हो जाता है. और वी नो द गेम ऑफ चाइनीज विस्पर की 1 से 10 तक पहुंचने में वैक्सीन मिल गया फिर भी लोग मर रहे हैं, तो वैक्सीन का क्या फायदा. नाउ पीपल आर स्केयर्ड लाइक वैक्सीन दूं कि ना ही दूं. सो गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से हमें ये एक ट्रस्ट जो है रूरल एरियाज में गवर्नमेंट पे जो ट्रस्ट है, मेडिकल फैटर्निटी पे जो ट्रस्ट है, उसको डेवलप करना बहुत जरूरी है सर. क्योंकि यहाँ पे इंफॉर्मेशन है कोविड क्या है बोल के, लेकिन उसके रिलेटेड प्रॉपर अवेयरनेस नहीं है, और लोग ज्यादातर जो WHO से हमें इंफॉर्मेशन मिलता है उससे ज्यादा लोग रूमर्स पे भरोसा करते हैं। रूमर्स पे क्यों भरोसा करते हैं सर? क्योंकि जो इंफॉर्मेशन गाइडलाइंस हम देखते हैं उससे हम हकीकत में विटनेस कर नहीं पा रहे हैं। कुछ अभी यहाँ पे लॉकडाउन लगा हुआ है सर, तो ले में देखिए तो इकोनॉमिक हमारा जो है 3 सेक्टर जो है काफी इंपॉर्टेंट है सर। एक है एग्रीकल्चर जो हमारा टॉप पर है, दूसरा है सर आर्मी, और तीसरा है सर टूरिज्म। अभी यहाँ पे वेजिटेबल सैपलिंग्स हो या मतलब एग्रीकल्चर का बिगिनिंग ही हुआ है, तो ऐसे लॉकडाउन में लोगों को प्रॉपर चीजें नहीं मिल रहा है, तो गांव वाले कंफ्यूज हो चुके हैं कि क्या करें क्या नहीं करें। यहाँ लोग कोविड से ज्यादा इस बात की चिंतित है कि हम कमाएं कैसे। सो ऐसा गवर्नमेंट, ऐसा पॉलिटिशियन, ऐसा पब्लिक रिप्रेजेंटेटिव जो मैंने यहाँ डिस्कवर किया है, लोगों को यहाँ कोविड से ज्यादा हम कैसे कमाएं उसके बारे में ज्यादा चिंतित है। और यहाँ लॉकडाउन जो हो रहा है, एक्चुअली जब पहले लॉकडाउन हुआ था तो गवर्नमेंट ने ये लोगों को बताया था कि लॉकडाउन में हम कोविड के लिए प्रिपेरेंस करेंगे, चाहे हम कोविड के सेंटर डेवलप करने के लिए हो या ऑक्सीजन प्लांट और सेटअप करने के लिए हो। तो हाल ही में जो लॉकडाउन हुआ है उसमें ऐसा कुछ मेजर स्टेप्स हमें देखने को नहीं मिल रहा है। मैं अभी इस माध्यम से एक चीज सजेस्ट करना चाहता हूँ कि जब जितने भी सारे अभी रूरल एरिया से ले में, वहाँ मेडिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की हालत जो है उतनी अच्छी नहीं है जितना होना चाहिए। तो ऐसा सोल्यूशन हम क्या कर सकते हैं, जैसे मैंने दिसंबर में अपने कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में किया था कि एक कोविड आइसोलेशन वार्ड बनाया था, और अभी हाल ही में वहाँ पे 100 बेड कैपेसिटी है। तो कुछ दिन पहले वहाँ 100 लोग क्वारंटीन कर रहे थे, अभी शायद 22 या 23 ऐसे पेशेंट बैठे हुए हैं। अगर हम हर गांव में अभी कोविड आइसोलेशन सेंटर करें तो शायद ये केस जो है कम होने की संभावना बहुत है, क्योंकि होम आइसोलेशन जो है रूरल एरियाज में कंप्लीटली प्रैक्टिकल नहीं है सर। बिकॉज यहाँ ऐसा है नहीं कि हर एक लोगों के लिए अलग रूम, अलग बाथरूम, अलग टॉयलेट हो। सब एक कॉमन टॉयलेट शेयर करते हैं, सब एक कॉमन बाथरूम शेयर करते हैं। सो होम आइसोलेशन का कॉन्सेप्ट जो है यहाँ रूरल ले एरियाज में प्रैक्टिकल नहीं है। तो आपके माध्यम से ये सजेस्ट करना चाहता हूँ, क्योंकि अभी एज वी आर इन ऑपोजिशन और यहाँ पे एक ऐसा पार्लियामेंट्री सेटअप है नहीं जहाँ हम डिबेट करें, डिस्कशन करें इन चीजों में। तो आपके माध्यम से ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि हर एक गांव में, हिंदुस्तान में भी शायद ये एप्लीकेबल हो, हर गांव में एक कोविड आइसोलेशन वार्ड अगर हम करें तो इस केस को हम अच्छे से टैकल कर सकते हैं। और रूरल एरियाज में प्रॉपर अवेयरनेस और करेक्ट इंफॉर्मेशन पहुंचना बहुत जरूरी है सर। ये इन 2-3 चीजों पे अगर हम गौर करें तो शायद अभी जो सेकेंड वेव में जितने इम्पैक्ट हुए हैं, शायद थर्ड वेव में ऐसा ना हो। जैसे कंडीशन अभी थाईलैंड का हुआ है वैसा हमारे इंडिया में ना हो, लेह में ना हो, कारगिल में ना हो, लद्दाख में ना हो। तो इसीलिए इन 3 चीजों पे फोकस करें तो आई थिंक कि हम कोविड को अच्छे से टैकल कर पाएंगे। So I don't have to say much. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity to put my words in front of many dignitaries. Thank you very much, sir.
थैंक यू। तो लोग, और मेरी आपसे रिक्वेस्ट ये रहेगी कि आप थोड़ा बने रहें, औरों को भी सुने, और क्योंकि कुछ क्वेश्चंस आएंगे आपके लिए भी बाद में, तो जितना आप कोशिश करें।
जी सर।
बहुत धन्यवाद आपका। और मुझे लगता है एक जो बहुत महत्वपूर्ण सवाल जो लोग ने रखा, क्योंकि इलेक्टेड रिप्रेजेंटेटिव हैं, शायद वो भी एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पहलू है, वो है लाइवलीहुड के इशू का, कि कितना प्रभावित हुआ है, और उसमें कोई कॉम्पनसेशन गवर्नमेंट से है, या मतलब ये ना, जैसा हम देख रहे हैं बड़े मुल्कों में कि कुछ पैसा दिया जा रहा है। यहाँ थोड़ा ये हम आपसे पूछना चाहेंगे, कुछ ऐसा सरकार कर रही है कि नहीं कर रही है? ये थोड़ा बाद के लिए आपसे सवाल रखेंगे हम लोग, कि ये बड़ा पहलू है और हम जानते हैं कि बहुत लोग इसमें प्रभावित और जुड़े हुए हैं। So thank you. And with this, I think we go to our next speaker, Simi, and I would request, because Dr. Seher Iqbal, because she's already listened to 2 of our speakers, one from Valley, another from Ladakh. So I think, Simi, would you be kind enough to introduce
Yes.
Ma'am Iqbal?
Yes, Dr. Seher Iqbal is a development expert and fellow at Lady Margaret Hall. And ma'am, welcome. Over to you.
Thank you, Sumi. So just to introduce myself a little bit more, I am that elusive kind of hybrid animal, a researcher activist.
जी गाले
So,
बस तरुण
so basically, I also run an NGO that works in rural Kashmir, particularly districts of Pulwama, Shopian, and Anantnag. And earlier, we had Mr. Panwar talking about Professor John Drez and his remarks and observations on the Kashmir economy. So he was my PhD supervisor, and he basically, in the interview that he had given to the Hindu, was basically quoting statistics from my PhD research.
Oh, great. Very nice.
So that's coming out, shameless self-plug, that is coming out in 2 months, distributed internationally by Columbia University Press. So I just wanted to connect to all the people who've spoken before me. We had a really great presentation from Swati, where she talked about how COVID has affected Jammu and Kashmir on a macro level. And Mr. Power raised rightly the question of, why some of these figures show up. So I think none of these figures are incidental. We have to look at, like Sajad mentioned, the levels of inequality in Jammu and Kashmir are probably the lowest in the country. We have a Gini coefficient of 0.24, which is much lower than the rest of the country. And basically that shows that as an economy, we have had, compared to other states, especially Punjab and other states around there, high levels of public spending that have been consistent. Also, less indebtedness in households, higher life expectancy. Our women live 5 years longer than the average Indian woman. And that is because of public policies like reservation of 50% of all medical seats for women across disciplines that we did in the 1980s. So we have been a very kind of, public policy driven state, not a state that's, based on the capitalist system or looking to fund the private sector. So we've had a heavily funded public sector till we were a state. And, here it needs to be pointed out that in 2019, when we were basically demoted to a union territory, we had a lot of positive legislation and bodies that were dealing with the rights of women, with the rights of abandoned children, with the rights of farmers and tribes, actually dissolved by the central government. They don't exist anymore. And what we have witnessed since then is a centralization of power. Now, all this was kind of putting on my economist hat, but if we now go to the activist side, I do agree with Sajad that in areas where there have been proactive counselors in rural areas, proactive functionaries, government functionaries, there has been a lot of good work done. Especially, ASHA workers, especially ANMs, they have performed superbly. But we have to see that any government, like you said, if it's not democratically elected, there is no two-way flow of information and resources. So what is happening because of that is we are seeing situations where the deputy commissioner of Srinagar basically said, all oxygen refills or all oxygen cylinders that were till then being distributed very well, I might add, by organizations like us, like Atrot, like SRO, like many others. He basically said, now everything has to route through me and my office. And in India, we know the levels of public functionaries, the understaffing, we know that the long queues, we know the bureaucracy, we know the red tape. So to replace a broad-based system on the grassroots with a centralized system that works less, well, that works much worse, in my opinion, is something that we have not seen in any other state in India. And let's see why that happened. That happened because the government is trying to centralize all delivery. On the other side, there is no accountability. Rather, the government is not responsible to the people after this. There are not going to be any elections, for the next 3 to 4 years. And we have to keep that in mind. Now, what that has meant is a lot of NGOs like us have to work around the rules. So instead of setting up, we had to shift our oxygen delivery whole system from Srinagar to Pulwama. And I think, working around that also helped. But if we look at simply things from a unitary point of view, like, we set up, DRDO set up a hospital here, and that's really great news because it has oxygen supply. Over time, we need to see any system, the health system, the disaster response system, as an interconnected system. We have to look at intersectionality. So even where there have been government centers set up for COVID, there have not been enough doctors, certainly not been enough nurses, not enough ambulances. So we've seen the case of Beej Bihara, where the accident trauma center was turned into a woman and child healthcare center for pregnant women with COVID. But over time, what happened is the government had given them no oxygen supply. So just before Eid, they had 3 days where they had ordered oxygen cylinders from Conmo, but they had absolutely no delivery. So organizations had to step in and supply a government hospital. So I think all these things really need to be taken into account. Another thing is we really need to look in the NGO sector, in civil society, and in the government, the bureaucracy, at sustainable solutions. So far, all of us are scrambling. I'll talk about the NGOs as well. All of us are scrambling for stopgap measures. An oxygen concentrator is a stopgap measure in rural Kashmir. It might be a solution in urban Kashmir, where you have better power supply, where you have people with generators, where people can afford those facilities. But in rural Kashmir, where there are 6-hour power cuts, it is not a solution. So we have to, over time, look at developing the infrastructure. And I think for that, the government needs to move out of centralization mode into a broad-based, cooperative, consultative system of disaster planning, which is not happening so far. Secondly, we also need to look at how, if we take the intersectional view, how certain sections have been affected much worse than other sections. So I cannot use my experience as a person of considerable privilege, who has a job that pays regularly, who has, better power supply, better clean water, a space to isolate. And I think Tundup actually raised a really good point about isolation facilities in villages. We have to look at how they've affected, let's say, widow-headed households. So what we are seeing, and Athrot has done a lot of work in that, we are also doing a lot of work. Widow-headed households in Jammu and Kashmir, if you look at any estimate, the count goes from 15,000 to 45,000. And what has happened is they are very dependent on the zakat system, which is where patrons, particularly located in urban and peri-urban areas, put money into the bank accounts of these women. So apart from the PDS-enabled food that they get, the rest of the expenses can be taken up by that. Another form of that is the Baitul Mal system that you have. So everywhere there are mohalla committees or mosque committees that have money for social welfare that they spend on distressed families. And this again is something that I've written about. So we have alternate systems of welfare delivery. But what happened is, in this case, COVID affected the cities very badly. So what you had was the patrons getting sick, the patrons in hospital, the patrons dying. A lot of Mohalla committee members got very early on infected with COVID, a lot of Baitul Mal members. So that whole delivery system itself was affected. And this is something that, the government really doesn't account for. But to the civil society, we know that this is a system for reach out anywhere. So we need to strengthen these systems, and we need to, address, and civil society has addressed to a large degree through monthly food rations, a lot of these widow-headed households. But I think over time, we need to make them sustainable with their own income. So in our organization, we've started, we've worked on sustainable livelihoods for 5 years. And we've worked largely in Jammu and Kashmir for 10 years. But we think that, what tends to get funding, right? Even today, if I, as an NGO person, go out, reaching out to any civil society network in India and say, we need funds, I will get funds for concentrators first and not for a sustainable livelihood means. So I think we need to develop intersectionality and cooperation around the civil society, the NGOs, the funding mechanism, the research, the publication, all of that. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Zahir. I think it was very nice to hear you, and especially those who are not from Kashmir. Maybe they cannot understand the agonizing pain of being in continuity, perpetual continuity of the absence of democratic governance. And I can only wish, that your wish doesn't come true, that for another 3 or 4 years, there are not going to be elections. So I can only wish that your wish doesn't come true. But I think what you have also pointed out is something very important, and that is, and quite an antithesis that we are witnessing in Kashmir. If we have to understand the mitigation strategies under the disaster risk reduction, then I think democratic decentralization, again, reiterate, it's not just decentralization, but democratic decentralization is the key. And this is what we are finding completely absent from the kind of strategies that we're witnessing across, but of course in Jammu and Kashmir. There's another connection that I have with Kashmir, and because we have lots of people who come from Kashmir to Simla, and we have that bond, strong bonds, relationships. Every Eid I've been celebrating in Kashmir since last 10 years, except when Burhan Wani thing happened, and of course since 2019 when we had the abrogation of 370s. Since then it's been very difficult. But yeah, so I can actually correlate, the kind of society and the kind of bonds that we mountain communities have. And unfortunately, in fact, our participants must realize that these bonds are getting, they are definitely getting shaken with the kind of centralization that we're seeing. Thank you, Dr. Zahir. So I think now we should jump to Kargil, and then we'll come to Jammu, Simi. So we have another important panelist. Kargili Saab, are you there? Why can't I see you? Simi?
Yes, can you hear me? Mr. Sajjad Kargili, are you there?
Or shall we take him?
Yeah, maybe later once. Mr. Kargili, are you there?
Or else then we go to Jammu. We have Professor Pavitra Kumar Jina, no?
Yes.
So,
sir, over to you. Sir is an assistant professor in the School of Economics at Shri Mata Vaishno Devi University. He is joining us from Katra. Sir, over to you.
Yeah. So, am I audible, Mr. Tikender Singh? Am I audible?
You're audible.
Yeah,
sir.
audible. Please, you are audible.
So since I got, I hope I got 6 to 8 minutes. So I'll concentrate my talk on 2 parts. One is when you have gave very relevant topics, that is rural realities. Since I'm not a practitioner, but since I'm reading newspapers, watching television, and when I'm going outside the university, I just judge and just watch the local people. From that experience, I can share something and I can talk and we can have discourse after that. So my first part will be like socio-economic reality checks, then economic reality check. Because as economics, I should talk actually what is happening from the economic front, and also I understand a little bit of socio-economic conditions in the rural areas. So if we'll talk about the rural areas of J&K, since if you go to the political economy of COVID-19, since the government is not here, so like this government machinery is not that proactive. So here what is required, so that civil society should come forward and they should create awareness among the people, then the people will understand what is that. So I totally endorse the view of like Mr. Nurbu, what he was telling, that even if that it become one stigma for the people in the rural areas, so even if they have like COVID and they are not going for testings, and if they know there is some symptom is there, they are like drinking hot water and they are doing some like traditional medicine practice, and in the end part of like they are going and that is creating problem for them. So I know some like NGOs and like ASA workers, they are working in the field, but that is not enough. And the second thing, so actually we need to understand, we need to keep the balance between life and livelihood. That is actually more important. So people like they should understand that like some people also migrated from that other part like Delhi, something like that. So there is a two like section of people here. There's some people they have permanent income, and some people they don't have permanent income. Those who are like sustaining with the daily incomes, now their daily income, they don't have actually any income. So that creates social tension among the society. So what happens? So in this case, those governments should come forward, and government should even if government is giving some like rations, but one special package should be given, like that Kejriwal has declared in the Delhi. So J&K government should give that. And another issue I can also discuss, since it's a forum, like I know since I'm here from Jammu Kashmir for 12 years, there is also regional disparity between Jammu and Kashmir. So somehow there is more emphasis is given one part, and even if you go to the one part also, there is a regional disparity between that like Srinagar and the interior area of Srinagar. So that inequality also we should look into that. Like if you see the Jammu part and what is happening like nearby Jammu, like village of Jammu and nearby like diaspora that nearby the Jammu border, and if you go to the Bhadrava village, so that is a hell and heaven difference. So that type of like awareness is not there in the if you go to the Bhadrava village. So what I was checking that status, so that that death rate in Jammu is like in Jammu and Kashmir is more like fatality rate is more than the national average. So now I'll come to the economic part. So why it is like more? So according to me, it is more because like it's a like hilly region and the infrastructure, medical infrastructure is not that good. And the second is that like in the government hospital, even if seats are there, some people they are actually not preferring, because like you know that now there are a lot of like debate is going on. That's I should endorse and we should discuss here. Even in the medical science like practitioner, they are also doing some mistake, like they are running things and in trial error methods, like they are giving overdose the steroids, so that's why people are dying. So even if doctor also doesn't know actually which medicine is working for like this COVID cases, so for that reason also some people that dying. So but that, and also there are some private hospitals they're charging the huge fee. So that paying that huge fee for the poor people is absolutely not possible. So what happens? People are dragged to the government hospital, or some people they are not going. So you will see that national average, I'm talking about Jammu and Kashmir. So till now, there are 2,90,465 total cases there. And out of that, 2,51,462 people are cured. And the total death till today is 3,907. So if we compare to the like I'm from Odisha state. So now in Odisha till now, there is a near about 8 lakhs cases is there. And even if the 8 lakhs cases, the death rate has not been reached in the 3,000. See about only 2 lakh something cases and death rate has reached to 4,000. So that means so in the death cases, Jammu and Kashmir, that even if rural area and urban area not in a comfortable position, so that now as a civil society and this the government has to think very seriously. Something is going wrong, and the people should come forward, and that rate should decrease. So that is my concern. But if you come to the another point of vaccinations, so that Jammu Kashmir is doing well, because that in the vaccination case, near about 60% people they are already vaccinated. So 27,000 because in Government of India is releasing that vaccination case separately from Jammu and Kashmir and for Ladakh. So for Jammu and Kashmir till to the 27,54,337 vaccination has been done for first doses, and for first doses and second doses it is 5,43,074. So in total, so 33,441 vaccination has been done. So from I'm optimistic that in the vaccination part that Jammu and Kashmir is doing good, and which in the future will save that death rate will come down. I'm not telling that death rate is it came down from 16% to 5%, but what damage had occurred, that I'm just talking about, that something wrong happens. And if you talk about things, the discussion is going on for Ladakh also. Ladakh also till now 1,22,247 first dose vaccination has given. For the second dose it was given 37,290, and the total 1,59,537 that vaccination has been done. It is also fairly good. Out of as you know that Ladakh population is near about 1,90,000, so it's up. It's is good. And also Jammu and Kashmir population is near around 1,52 crores. So here my concern is that when we are doing the reality check, now the only way out is that vaccinations. So I was reading some research papers, so that we need to convince to the rural people, even if urban people also some 30-40% they don't understand. After vaccination, there is a chance. There is a difference. After vaccination of first dose, there is a possibility of infection is equal to 0.03% after the first dose. And after the second dose, the probability of infection is 0.02%. So please think about it. Somebody has taken, so there is not much gap between the first dose and second dose. If somebody is taking first dose, so out of 1,000 people, only 3 people will develop if they will get affected, and that when they will get affected, and that is not severe cases. So the vaccination is the only way out through we can do the actual reality check. And for the reality check, we need to increase the awareness among the rural people. And that increase that awareness on the rural people, I told, since the government is not there, so that a lot of people like NGO people.
Yeah, I think, are we there, Simi? Have we missed? Or have I missed?
No, sir, it's stuck.
Okay, great. So are we done with Dr. Jaina, or
Sir, let him come back. We have Sajad sir here.
Okay, so I think I should move to Sajad Kargili Sahab. Huh?
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
So
Yes.
yeah, but I think Dr. Jaina raised an important point about vaccination. We would also like to have a split of Jammu and Kashmir. I mean, what is the percentage of first dose and second dose vaccinations? Do we have that figure?
We have that, sir.
Yeah, so we would like,
Actually, we'll bring in.
and I wish what Dr. Jaina is saying, vaccination is the key, definitely, but I hope the government also.
Jaina sir is back.
So Dr. Jaina, are you done or?
Sir, please unmute. Pavitra sir, please unmute yourself.
Yes. I'm audible now?
Okay,
There
yes.
is some like internet interruptions were there.
Yeah,
so I think now I have taken 1-2 minutes late. So this is from my side. So I'll be happy if you have some questions. So
yes,
we'll do the
please.
discourse after this discussion. Thank you.
Please stay back. I think that's an interesting presentation that Dr. Jaina has made, especially on vaccinations. And I told when you were not here, Dr. Jaina asked me to have to give us a split between Jammu and Kashmir. What is the percentage of first dose and the second doses of vaccination? How we vaccinated our people? So we'll come to it later. But I wish what you're saying, the government also agrees to that, because soon, I mean, I don't know what is the situation from in this group from 15 to 45. What you're saying is 45 plus. So what is the situation? Because now actually the target is 15 to 45. So are we getting those slots? Because it's a real mess, let me tell you, even some of the advanced states. So I think that is also, I wish somebody will cover that. So I think we can now move to Kargili Saab, who joins us from Kargil. And welcome, Sajad Saab. So I was there recently in a conference. What a lovely place. And I have asked my town, I mean, similar to, if Kargil agrees, your entire, sewage and sanitation stuff can be managed by Shimla. I mean, that is what we have promised to Kargil. It's just like a ward, and the topography is quite similar to that of
Shimla.
Some of the wards, that we have in Shimla. So we are quite, hopeful that probably if we get that opportunity, so I can ask my city government, and the city government officials were also there. They were quite keen to actually come over and then help out. So please, Sajad bhai.
Thank you all. And first of all, I'm thankful to IMPRI. You have invited me for this wonderful session. Basically, if we see about this improvement of medical infrastructure in rural places like Kargil, they must be applied and shall not be depend on, because our health system is entirely dependent on Srinagar, Jammu and Delhi, because in Kargil town itself, the health infrastructure is not good. So we cannot talk about the rural areas. What would be? We can understand what would be the condition in the rural areas. If we will see that Ladakh remains cut off for 6 months with the rest of the country and our erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir, and Kargil particularly, because there is no air connectivity, there is no road connectivity for 6 months. So our economy is entirely health, education and economy. All these three sectors are entirely dependent on Jammu and Kashmir. So last year when this pandemic outbreaks in Ladakh, we have seen so many things, like suddenly the lockdown have been imposed, and we have seen many people employment rose, and we have seen many people, they got frustrated. A kind of frustration was seen there in Kargil, because we have short season for developmental activities in Ladakh, and major developmental works are at halt for COVID-19 first wave. Then we demanded government to give some special attention to our region, to pace up and complete the developmental works. But still, now we are very much hopeful that our honorable LG Ladakh R.K. Mathur Saab has announced free vaccination for all Ladakhis. तो अगर मैं ये कहूँ कि लद्दाख जैसे क्षेत्र में कोविड-19 को टैकल करना बहुत ज्यादा आसान है एज कम्पेयर टू अदर प्लेसेस ऑफ इंडिया। जैसे आप देखेंगे कि यूपी, बिहार और ऐसे बहुत सारी जगहों में जहाँ पे आप नाके नहीं लगा सकते, बंद नहीं कर सकते लोगों को इंटर होने से, लेकिन लद्दाख एक ऐसी जगह है जहाँ सिर्फ 3 एंट्री पॉइंट है जहां से लद्दाख इंटर किया जा सकता है। वी हैव मनाली रोड, वी हैव लेह एयरपोर्ट एंड जोजिला पास। अगर इन 3 जगहों पे अच्छे से यहाँ पे स्क्रीनिंग हो, टेस्ट हो और यहाँ से कोविड केसेस को अच्छे से आइडेंटिफाई करने के बाद लोगों को आने दिया जाए, तो मुझे नहीं लगता है कि इस रीजन में या नाइट कर्फ्यू हो या फिर लॉकडाउन की कोई आवश्यकता है। दूसरी बात यह है कि हमारा, चूंकि आपको बताया कि सीजन बहुत शॉर्ट है, बहुत ज्यादा जो है लॉकडाउन की वजह से, क्योंकि 6 महीने हम नेचुरल एक लॉकडाउन में ही रहते हैं। यहाँ डॉक्टर साहब एक चीज बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग है कि जब यहाँ विंटर होता है तो यहाँ फ्रेश वेजिटेबल नहीं मिलती है, और फ्रेश वेजिटेबल जब हमारे पास आती है तो हमें लाइन में लग करके फ्रेश वेजिटेबल के लिए राशन कार्ड लेकर फ्रेश वेजिटेबल खरीदना पड़ता है। और उसके बाद जब हम घरों में फ्रूट लाते हैं, फ्रूट, तो हमें 3 किलो या 2 किलो फ्रूट जो है वो मिल जाता है, उससे ज्यादा वो अलाउ ही नहीं है, क्योंकि सबको डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करना होता है। तो वो 1 या 2 किलो जो हमें ऑरेंज मिलता है या बनाना मिलता है या कुछ भी मिलता है, वो हम प्रसाद की तरह घर में बांट के खाते हैं। तो ये कंडीशन है यहाँ की लाइवलीहुड की कंडीशन। जहां तक एजुकेशन की बात है, अगर आप देखेंगे यहाँ जंस्कार वैली में या फिर आप हमारे लेह के चांगथांग साइड में देखेंगे, बहुत रूरल एरिया से दूर दराज के इलाके हैं जहाँ एजुकेशन का भी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इतना मजबूत नहीं है। अगर आप द्रास की तरफ देखेंगे, द्रास सेकंड इनहेबिटेड कोल्डेस्ट प्लेस इन द वर्ल्ड, जहाँ -30 से 40-50 तक टेम्परेचर जाता है। और अगर सुरु वैली की बात करें, इन एरियाज में लोगों का घर से बाहर निकलना दुभर हो जाता है। तो ऐसे में एजुकेशन बहुत बुरी तरह इफेक्ट होता है। तो आप अब चूंकि ऑनलाइन क्लासेस का सिलसिला शुरू हुआ है, इसमें बहुत सारे ऐसे एरियाज हैं जहाँ पे इंटरनेट कनेक्टिविटी है ही नहीं। 3-3, 4-4 साल हुए हैं बहुत सारी जगहों में, जो चूंकि कारगिल बॉर्डर क्षेत्र है, तो यहाँ अगर आप कोई टावर भी लगाते हैं तो आपको आर्मी से परमिशन की जरूरत होती है। लेकिन अभी तक परमिशन जो है वो देने से बहुत हद तक जो है लोगों को मुश्किलात हो रही है, परमिशन नहीं मिलता है। लेकिन उसके बावजूद कुछ चीजें जो हमारे यूनियन टेरिटरी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ने किया है, जो बहुत अच्छा उन्होंने सेटअप उठाया है, वो ये है कि वैक्सीनेशन ड्राइव उन्होंने फ्री करने का जो उन्होंने ऐलान किया है, दैट इज वेरी पॉजिटिव स्टेप। और मैं ये चाहता हूं कि जिस तरीके से हमने देखा है कि पास्ट में भी जो वैक्सीनेशन है उसके लिए काफी लंबा टाइम लगा, आप पोलियो का देखिए और भी बहुत सारे, लेकिन इस वैक्सीनेशन के लिए जरूरी है कि ज्यादा से ज्यादा और जल्दी वैक्सीनेशन ड्राइव को कंप्लीट किया जाना चाहिए। और लद्दाख की मात्र 3 लाख की आबादी में वैक्सीनेशन को कंप्लीट करना बहुत आसान है। और अगर एक बार जो है वो दोनों डोज वैक्सीनेशन के हुए और लोगों के अंदर मास अवेयरनेस के लिए लोगों का कोऑपरेशन बहुत तेजी से, यहाँ की सिविल सोसाइटीज डिमांड करके लॉकडाउन को एक्सटेंड करवाती है। आप लेह के अंदर देखेंगे लद्दाख बुद्धिस्ट एसोसिएशन, वहाँ की बुद्धिस्ट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, मुस्लिम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, क्रिश्चियन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस, और कारगिल के अंदर भी जो रिलीजियस ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस है, उनका बहुत पॉजिटिव रोल रहता है कि वो किसी न किसी तरीके से जो जरूरतमंद है उन तक, जिस तरह डॉक्टर सहर साहिबा ने भी कहा कि जो ज़कात का कंसेप्ट है उसको किसी न किसी तरीके से लोग जो है वो अमल में लाते हैं। और अभी जो कोरोना का जो काल आया बिलखुसूस रमजान के मंथ में, तो उससे लोगों ने बहुत हद तक जो है आगे आ करके एक दूसरे का हाथ थामा। और यही वजह है कि अभी कारगिल और लेह में केसेस अगरचे बहुत है, लेकिन जिस हिसाब से लोगों का कॉपरेशन रहा, लोगों का ताउन रहा हमारी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के साथ, वो अपने आप में बड़ा इम्पोर्टेंट मिसाल है। हमने देखा कि बहुत सारे बच्चे जिन्होंने इस पैंडेमिक में अपने पेरेंट्स को खोए, और उनकी एजुकेशन जो है उसको इंश्योर करना बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी है। हम अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट बहुत तेजी से बढ़ रहा है, जॉब पैकेजेस का ज्यादा से ज्यादा उसका ऐलान होना जरूरी है। और जो BPL बिलो पॉवर्टी लाइन फैमिलीज हैं, उनके लिए कम से कम 6 महीने का राशन पानी का इंतजाम होना जरूरी है। क्योंकि जैसे मेरे से पहले टुंडुप ने भी कहा, टुंडुप बहुत मेहनत कर रहा है और अपने क्षेत्र में जिस इलाके से ये काउंसलर है वहाँ काफी इनकी एक्टिविटीज काफी प्रेरणादायक है। लेकिन हमने ये देखा है कि इन एरियाज में जहाँ इस वक्त टूरिज्म बिल्कुल खत्म हो चुका है, टूरिज्म सेक्टर जो है बुरी तरह से मुतासर हुआ है, एजुकेशन सेक्टर मुतासर हुआ है, हेल्थ सेक्टर जो है वो एक क्राइसिस से जूझ रही है, और जो जो दिन में कमा के खाने वाले लोग हैं उनका मामला जो है वो उसको ज्यादा से ज्यादा और बहुत जरूरी है कि उसको अच्छे से एड्रेस किया जाना चाहिए। और लद्दाख के संदर्भ में मैं यही कहूंगा कि यहाँ वैक्सीनेशन को जल्द से जल्द किया जाए ताकि लोगों को परेशानी ना हो, और जिन एरियाज में जो जरूरियात है खासकर रूरल एरियाज में हेल्थ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो है वो मजबूत नहीं है, और हम इतनी जल्दी जो है हेल्थ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को जल्दी से डेवलप भी नहीं कर सकते। लिहाजा वैक्सीनेशन एंड अवेयरनेस बहुत जरूरी है। एजुकेशन के संदर्भ में मैं ये कहूँगा कि ये जो कनेक्टिविटी है बहुत ज्यादा एरियाज में जहाँ जहाँ नहीं है वहाँ होनी चाहिए। और तीसरी बात जो है, जो पुअर फैमिलीज है उन तक जो है वो हेल्प होनी चाहिए। आप लोगों का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया कि आप लोगों ने मुझे बुलाया, और जो भी सवाल होगा होपफुली कोशिश करूंगा सर की बात करूं। थैंक यू सर।
बहुत शुक्रिया सजाद भाई, और आपका मतलब समय देने का। और वहाँ अभी मौसम कैसा है? आपने खूब स्वेटर डाला है, और मैं भी मतलब शिमला में हूँ, ठंड है, लेकिन आपका तो बहुत बुरी हालत लग रही है। हाँ?
जी जी, यहाँ थोड़ी ज्यादा ठंड है सर, इस साल गर्मी ही नहीं आई कोरोना
यहाँ
के
भी
साथ
नहीं है,
साथ। जी जी
शिमला में भी गर्मी नहीं है। एनीवे, तो बहुत धन्यवाद आपका। और आपकी जो 3 बातें मुखर होकर आई हैं, जिसमें ये रिलीफ पैकेजेस की बात, आई थिंक ये बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। So Arjun, I think we are now exhausted. I mean, I don't think we have a panelist left to speak. Simi, is it so?
सर I'm very sorry, मुझे काफी देर भी हुई आने में, तो मैं उसके लिए
नहीं, प्लीज सजाद भाई, कुछ देर नहीं। Simi?
I think we have another panelist.
Louder, I can't hear you.
Sir, I think we have another panelist. Arjun, in the name of guest, if you can help.
I'm trying to. Some panelists from Athraut were there, but not now connecting. But sir, we can, Tikender sir, we can go to the next round if you have any questions.
Next round,
yeah.
I think maybe next round we could go for kind of summing up in the sense. And then, I mean, there's a general perception that I've realized. I mean, I didn't think that I'll hear such voices from Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. I thought they would be more belligerent, I mean, more demanding. I mean, there's hardly any demand, Dr. Seher. Why is it so? I mean, I was there, I was moderating the Himachal chapter, and you won't believe the kind of demands that were raised. Quite rightly, I mean, the hoteliers had their own demands in the pandemic. Health, like the cardiologist who, in fact, summed up, he just blasted my health system, though we are a far better health system than many of our neighboring states. Why I'm finding those voices? I don't want to provoke anyone, but the point is that, actually we've lost people. I mean, what Dr. Jaina was saying, we've lost thousands, nearly 4,000 people. It's a big number. How can we digest that? Or maybe is it that Kashmir has become accustomed to, I remember one of my actually alma mater, Professor Pratap Bhanu Mehta, writing long ago. He said, it's Indianization of Kashmir, and slowly we'll have Kashmirization of India. So I don't know what is this happening, but this is something that I never thought that would happen. But anyway, if that is the objectivity, then fine. I mean, this is the objectivity. That is how we realize. But tell me, Dr. Seher, I come to you, and then of course Dr. Sajad Pada, and to Dr. Jaina, and of course Sajad Bhai. We have seen this. I've been actually many your elected people from the I think it's called the DDC, the District Development Councils. They've been visiting Delhi, because I moved to Delhi now, and complaining about the mess that is their ration, and so all that compound compounded this whole issue. So, and of course, the Apple economy, I mean, it's completely devastated. Couldn't reach the. So, how? I mean, what is it? I mean, what is it, Dr. Seher?
So I think it's also contextualize it a bit. It's not that we are more used to death, or for us death is normalized. I think now fundamentally I can speak for Kashmir Valley fundamentally, and Kargil also. There is, in August 2019, a body blow was delivered to us. So it's like cutting somebody's head off and then asking them, why aren't you asking for this and why are you not asking for that? So the whole severance of the link between people and government was ironically started by the government and is now so all pervasive that the person on the ground really doesn't see the point even going to his local representative. And I'm not speaking for Kargil and Ladakh here, but I'm just speaking again for Kashmir Valley. People really don't even connect with their DDC members, with their councillors, because there's this idea of we were murdered and now you are like siding with the people who murdered us. One is that. Second, I think over time what happened because of the internet ban was that a lot was going on at the time. There were like lots of protests, a lot of speaking out, lots of complaints. That was still, the old system, the shards were there. So people to people, the connection was happening, and people were trying to get people to raise the concerns. They were asking officials to raise their concerns. They were asking local leaders to raise their concerns, especially political leaders. And that didn't happen, because of the clampdown, the arrests, and the total ban on the internet. So over time, I think we have in Kashmir channeled our energies not to ask, the government for help, because now there's not just, earlier there was distrust. Now there is absolutely no relationship, I would say. And we have become more inward looking. We are looking at our own resources and we are seeing what we can mobilize and help our own people. So I think it's that rather than anything else.
I think you've very aptly answered what my concern and people like me, their concern would have been after. So thank you so much, Dr. Seher. So Arjun, I think we should go for a last round.
Yes, sir, of course.
There are a few questions to address to Dr. Seher. So I would like Simi to point those questions to Dr. Seher, and then probably I can ask the others to just speak for the last 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, how do they? How do they really think about?
Yes, if I can disturb, like somebody asked my first question to me, I think if you see the chat, like some first question somebody asked to me, some anonymous name.
Wait, Dr. Pavitra. Dr. Pavitra, wait. Let Simi do that. I mean, and if there's a question to you, we'll surely come back to you.
Yes. So one of the questions, Dr. Seher has already responded on the chat box itself, and one question is that is from your presentation. I am heartbroken for the people to know how helpless the government is at the moment. Dr. Seher, in your opinion, how quickly can the situation be minimized, and what is the survival rate on monthly basis? This is a question to ma'am. And ma'am has also responded. I think we need to wait for a year.
So I just want to add to it. When we look at things like infection rates, when we look at disease spread, when we look at the multiplier effect, we have to realize that, my colleague from Jammu, Dr. Pavitra, he also said that you have to look at not just regional variations, but micro-regional variations. So if you look at the second wave that we are now in the middle of, Maharashtra got into it a lot faster and came out a lot faster. Similarly, if you look at Jammu and Kashmir right now, we are somewhere in 50% in as a whole state. But if you look at how the urban areas got affected first, Jammu and Srinagar, Then how, you had the caseload increasing in the established towns, like, Baramulla, like Anantnag. So that is again a pattern. And now we are seeing even in the, the tier one kind of, if we can call them that, towns, and the peri-urban areas, the densely populated, there it is starting to stabilize. But now what you will see is the spread, exponential spread in the actual village areas. And that will be a problem because the hospitals are already full from the peri-urban and urban areas themselves. So I think we need to be careful at giving blanket figures.
Am I?
I'll stop here.
Can you hear us, Tikender sir? No. Pavitra sir, why don't you go on? You saw.
So, yes, somebody is asking that I lost some some relatives. You were talking about the vaccination rate, but that what I was telling, that is empirical facts, that when you take the first dose, that there is a chance of 0.03% infection is there. And people, I'm not telling that people are not dying, because also the vaccination, all the vaccination, they are not telling it is 100% efficient, and like 100% that probability that it will not. So like different, like Covishield is claiming the percentage is different, Covaxin is claiming percentage is different, Madonna is claiming the percentage is different. But what I told, that overall after taking vaccines, so like even if like you will affected, that severity of affect that infection will be actually lowered down. So what will happen in the future, that burden on like medical infrastructure will actually will come down. What I was talking, that Dr. Seher was telling, that now the medicals are full, like it is that there is no bed in the medical, and that is how why is happening, because there is a two angles, that some people who are very influential people, who actually they don't need actual hospital, but they are going and they have money and they are enrolled in the private hospitals. So they are in that like in that private cabin. Like I will give one very good example. I'm based in here, that there is one hospital, is the Narayan Hospital, which is run by corporate, like Narayan Hospital, where what is happening, that they are taking all people who they have a huge money and they can afford it, and people really they don't need it, and people, the poor people who are dying and they need oxygen and they need actually hospitalizations, so they are not getting the bed. The people who are like rich people and they can afford and they're getting the bed, and ultimately people who are supposed to like need that the urgent medical attention, they are not getting the bed. So what happened ultimately, that poor people, they are dying. So if the like rich people and the like educated people, if they'll understand that like I don't need that that hospitalization now, and somebody who will like better like need that, he should like need it. That like if I can cite one story, that I was reading a newspaper, somebody like old man of the 70, he gave his own oxygen because some young people are suffering. He told, no, I don't need that, young chap is need, and ultimately that old man died and that the young survived. So that is the humanity is coming around. That old man understand that like I am the like latter stage of my life, and the young chap, if he will survive, so he is like future of the country. So that type of humanity, that type of sacrifice should come, and if will be so that is my point. I want to like ignite that. So this is the way I can respond.
Okay, thank you. So I think one of the reasons, I don't know, Dr. Jena, I think we have to substantiate that story also, because probably that was contested, that old man story. Anyway, I don't want to contest that now, right? Yeah, so, but I think one of the reasons why there could be a high death rate in J&K is that people respond quite late. By that time, the virus has already infected them badly. And this is what we have witnessed even in Himachal, because my wife happens to be, she was heading the COVID unit here. She's a heart surgeon, and we had pulled in all our resources. And they could even survive one woman who's 102 years old. So I mean, that also, those stories also we are witnessing. But I think one of the generalizations that we have found, especially in the mountain states, where the patients reach quite late to the hospitals, by that time actually the damage has been badly done. So I don't know. I mean, we need to just substantiate it through that. I wish somebody would do that. So, Dr. Sajat Pada, I think over to you, because what are your final comments the last 3 minutes? Because you've spoken very eloquently about the work that is being done by ASHA workers, but where are the gaps and what are those gaps? And I can understand. I mean, the kind of situation you all are in. I can just understand. I can't even feel that because I know it's really a different. I mean, since and as I narrated that I visit Kashmir every year because I have those bonds. So beyond that, I don't think I have words to really share. But yeah, I mean, how do you really understand this?
Okay. First of all, it is quite heartening to listen Pratap Bhanu Mehta's name from you, because he is kind of one of my inspirations in political science field. Secondly, I fully agree with you that why there is more mortality rate. I think two reasons are responsible. One is that people tend to not expose themselves or not to get tested or vaccinated on time. One of our relatives died because he had a heart ailment, and also he tested positive, but they didn't report to the concerned health experts until his situation deteriorated. And at the last stage, they went to hospital, admitted him there, but he ultimately lost fight to this virus. So, of course, this hesitancy, skepticism contributes to more mortality rates. And secondly, if I'm not kind of sounding nihilistic or kind of skeptic myself, there was a kind of inquiry committee government was envisaging that we will set up an inquiry committee to look into why mortality rate is more, because there are at least one case I know. Doctors declared a female from our village dead because of COVID, but we know that she was safe patient for some years, or last 3-4 years. So even her family members said that she died because of C, not because of COVID, but doctors still declared her a case of COVID death. So even government is thinking about looking into, are these numbers factual, or there is some kind of discrepancy found when these numbers are recorded? And secondly, sir, you talked about Apple industry. Of course, it is one of the main sectors of our economy and growing very rapidly. Even agricultural land is being converted to horticulture sector. But I vividly remember last year as well that there was no major disruption in supply of apples from Kashmir Valley to other parts of the country, except 2 or 3 incidents I could remember from Shupian district that has a volatile law and order situation, that some trucks were burned. Even probably one driver was killed. But largely from other parts of Kashmir, there was smooth supply of apples to other parts of the country. Of course, at the later stage of season, there was slump in prices of apples, but that was largely to do with large government of India policy, because they encouraged import of apples from USA and China. So that happened with our walnut industry as well. Once you encourage or you reduce tariffs of commodities from other countries, of course your domestic industry will suffer. And thirdly, I completely agree with Sahar ma'am. I mean, there is no kind of disagreement with decentralization process and role of civil society, role of NGOs. I mean, that should happen and that must be encouraged. And I fully agree with her that the tendency of some of the sections in the bureaucracy has been to channelize all sorts of COVID-related efforts through one agency. So that's not desirable in an ideal democratic setup. Thank you. from my side.
Thank you, Dr. Sajjad. And I think final words, Dr. Jena, you want to add something more to your presentation? And then I'll finally go to, is Sajjad Bhai there? Because Sajjad Bhai also needs to speak. Yeah,
Yes, Sajjad.
Sajjad Bhai, let Jonas, let Dr.
Okay.
Jena speak. And uske baad aap.
Then, like I just just wondering to know that even if the cases are high in J&K, so when I just go outside, people don't actually adhere to that this COVID appropriate behavior. That is also another reason why that high case is death rate is increasing, because that somehow that awareness is not reached to the rural people and the poor people. That is another reason what I think I should add to that. That is also very good contributor for this situation in J&K.
Right. And Seher ma'am, you'll just find up the entire thing then. Yeah. Sajjad Bhai.
Sajjad Bhai, go first.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
right.
sir. I have to say, sir, as you know, we are already in natural isolation because, as I have told you, because we remains cut off from the world for 6 months. If these 2-3 places, the entry points for of Ladakh, if these sports are being monitored carefully, then I don't think there will be any kind of spike of COVID cases in Ladakh. But still, there is a need to improve the infrastructure, health infrastructure in Ladakh, because in Kargil town and Leh town, as I told you, still there is no super specialty hospital in Ladakh. We are still bound to go to Srinagar, Delhi, or Jammu, particularly Valley. In these times, because of lockdown, many people, they suffer a lot due to because there are earlier there was a single administration, but now this time we have to take permission from 2 different administrations. First one from Ladakh administration and another from Jammu Kashmir administration. So it's not easy for an ordinary person to go and for medical treatment to Srinagar now. So there is a need to take care of these 2-3 things, because if government will improve health infrastructure in Ladakh, if these 2-3 entry spots would be monitored, and the third one, if government will provide relief package for the BPL people, and the fourth one for the students, if government provide telecommunication in the rural areas, then I don't think that there will be any high crisis of COVID cases in Ladakh, because people are already very much cooperative to tackle COVID pandemic in Ladakh. Thank you, sir. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Sajjad Bhai. And I wish we could just come to Kargil again. Let's hope.
Definitely, you're welcome. You all are welcome. Yes.
Thank you. Seher ma'am, and then I'll just say a few words.
So I just want to share screen, if I can just beg some indulgence, just to go over some statistics. Is this visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
So I think one of the things that I find, that my pet peeve is when Jammu and Kashmir is represented through census figures that are 10 years old, when there are other much more up-to-date figures, including the National Family Health Survey of 2016. So if we look at it, the average out-of-pocket per delivery expenditure is higher for Jammu and Kashmir than it is for the rest of India on average. If we look at the fully immunized children, for us, we are over 75%. Now this figure would even be over 80%. And, the rest of India, the average figure is 62. Yeah. Even for literacy, we are now kind of slightly ahead, even in terms of women who are literate and men who are literate. These are all NFHS figures. And if we come to, I just want your attention for this one, the nutrition figures. So body mass index, there's no comparison. We are half of the Indian average rates. Anemia, which is another malnutrition indicator, stunting, all of us, we lead on that. And life expectancy is, much higher for us than the rest of the country. So I think, the low death rates on average for the whole state are because of this legacy of investment in public health that has produced indicators that are, much better than national averages. Having said that, there have been medical studies that have linked, death rates directly to BCG coverage. And there are two French doctors who have done a lot of good work on this. If we look at the level of BCG coverage, it tends to be lower in Jammu, especially Poonch, Rajouri, Kathua, that side, rather than the valley, which is smaller and easier to vaccinate, right? So it could, if we link those two and there is a correlation there found medically, then, there is something to be said for that. And again, like, Mr. Singh said, that late reporting, late case identification, late hospitalization is also, for hard to reach areas, it's also a factor. So I think when we talk about death rates, we need to be careful that the death rate, even in, a very, very far off area in Rajouri, is not the same death rate as you are getting in urban Gujarat right now.
Yeah, true, definitely.
So definitely we need to, look at how this proves. The only point this proves is that a huge investment in public infrastructure, public health infrastructure, like Sajad Bhai said, in all parts of the Union Territories of Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh is the way to go forward. There's absolutely nothing else that's going to help. So I'll stop.
Well, thank you, Dr. Seher, Dr. Sajad, Dr. Pavitra Jena, and of course, our team in IMPRI. There is two things that I want to add, and not add. Maybe let me make those sweeping generalizations, and that I draw from the sheer experience of serving a city for 5 years, being the directly elected deputy mayor of Simla, and of course being part of the larger democratic movement of which I was very active right from my university days till now. The first thing that happens to be, and I think that's a lesson for all of us, for those who are not from J&K and Ladakh, is that there is no alternative to public spending, actually. And actually, public spending, which was layered over land reforms. And this is what we have witnessed in Jammu and Kashmir, and of course in Himachal Pradesh. And two names that, though I'm not really very fond of naming, but two names I think that come to my mind, maybe Abdullah Saab in J&K and Dr. Vais Parmar in Himachal Pradesh. Instrumental, they fought against the tide, fought against the feudal lords, and actually enacted those land reform acts. What those land reform acts did, I don't have to explain here, probably people realize, empowering the people economically and actually allowing them to have assets. On that, the catalyst of governance, what Dr. Seher and Dr. Sajad were pointing out, is the catalyst of governance, the catalyst of massive public spending, which we have witnessed both in J&K and in Himachal Pradesh. You name the corner and you'll find the health center and you find the education center there. I think that's something very important for us. So there can be no alternative to that. I think that's a lesson. We don't have to really go to Spain and understand, when they are demanding nationalization of the health services, it is quite inherently prevalent here. The kind of frivolous, what Dr. Jena was also pointing out. That is not going to lead us to the SDGs, to the sustainability of the system. No way are we going to go closer to that. I think that's one of the profound things that we learn through the praxis. The praxis that we second thing, and that is to me, I think again that's a generalization that I want to make. is that those resilient structures which you have inherited since ages, maybe those resilient structures maybe term, in the modern sense, exploitative. I can understand, but those resilient structures have existed over the time. So with the kind of centralization that we're witnessing, we are breaking them, not democratizing them, not decentralizing or democratizing. That's my take. I mean, that's what we are witnessing even in Himachal Pradesh. And I think that would, what Dr. Sajad was saying, that's a kind of disruption. We don't know what is going to happen actually. So that's a scary disruption that we are witnessing. I mean, we are breaking our structures. To me, I don't think that disruption is for the good. Because we have those community level, participatory, like what you pointed out. If I could, zakat system, or all those systems. We have lived for ages, for centuries together. It's not that we created those. So now, if those structures are like, I don't say that they are being hit, but I mean, if we lose them, or the kind of, the only thing is, I think we need to democratize them more with the modern democratic system. And if that is not happening, I think that's the worst fear. And I wish, Dr. Sayer, that your
Did we lose, sir?
Yeah, I think we lost her.
Okay. Nevertheless, Simi, would you like to now quickly propose a vote of thanks? I will check with Tikender, sir.
Just before the vote of thanks, Dr.
Please.
Kumar, if you could please share the email addresses and contact details of all the panelists. Some of the panelists know, but there's some I really want to reach out across in, especially Kargil and Leh. So that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Right, joint email we have sent. We will again send with all the links and all.
Thank you.
I will also share on phone, no problem. Simi, over to you.
Thank you, everyone. And I take this opportunity to formally propose the vote of thanks. This has been a very, very enriching and straight from the heart discussion. I must say, all the panelists, you've spoken straight from your heart, and the actual realities that are prevailing. And so much to learn for all of us, and for all of us who will be watching later on YouTube, on Facebook, and all those who participated. I'm sure you agree with me with the kind of interactive session that we had was very enriching. So thank you so much. And I, on behalf of the Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, I thank all of you, dear respected panelists, for sparing time from your schedules and joining us for a discussion on this very important theme. And I would especially like to thank our panelists, Mr. Sajad Kargili, Mr. Tunrup Nurbu, and Dr. Pabitra Jaina sir, Dr. Sajad Pader, Dr. Seher Iqbal, for your time and for your inputs, very, very important. And most of all, our moderator for the session, Mr. Tikender Singh Pawar. I would also like to thank our presentation team from IMPRI and Dr. Arjun, Ms. Ritika, Assistant Director of IMPRI, and for leading this discussion successfully. Thank you so much. Thank you. I wish you all a very good day, and please stay safe.
Thank you, Dr. Singh, and thank you all for your patience time.